Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com. Welcome back to another live edition on our Friday at 3 o'clock. Well, as you can tell, I didn't head out of town, so we're just back in the studio this time around. But when I do head out on location, we'll give you a heads up to where that'll be, because it just kind of fell through. Couldn't pull it together for this weekend, so I'm just going to be at home. Well, it looks like we've already got a couple of questions lining up, and Pablo had sent me a question last week that I evidently missed, or the week before, and he was asking about a 03 CBR 600RR model shuts off from time to time when I take off kind of fast and it's not warmed up. Takes an hour to start back up. What could this be? I have a new battery in it, fuel pump, primes, and all. Well, it sounds like you're eliminating a lot of the problem. But I'm a little bit suspicious of it takes an hour for it to start back up. I mean, are you sure, or you just wait a while, then it fires back up? What I've actually seen on that particular model, there is I think it's a side stand switch that will actually cut off the bike if you were to put down the side stand. And that is dangerously close to the front sprocket. And I have seen in the past where the cabling, where it's usually anchored under a hard acceleration, would actually move in, hit that part of the chain, and shut the bike down. So I really don't think it's anything fuel related, because you're saying that it primes up. But if I'm wrong about the side stand cutoff switch, why don't you do a fuel pump test on it and let me know what the fuel pressure is. Should be in the 45 to 50 PSI range. So take a peek at that and see if that has anything to do with it. All right, you say it just turns over, but it won't start if I don't let it rest for at least an hour. I can't find a relay or anything that it could be. Let's go back and look at that front sprocket and see if that side stand switch has, or the cabling for it has anything to do with it. All right, David is asking me, hey John, any chance of straightening a subframe on a Raptor 700? That's going to be a little tough, because if memory serves, isn't that an aluminum subframe on that one? And aluminum, once it is bent, it doesn't like to bend back without getting, because it's actually not very malleable, if that's the correct word. And once you bend aluminum once or twice, it's pretty much done. So I would be hesitant to try to straighten out an aluminum subframe on that one. All right, Bobby's asking me what is the best starter to go with that is fairly inexpensive for an 04 Raptor 660. Well, that's a little bit of a loaded question. The best starter out there is going to be your OEM. And we talked last week a little bit about going with the aftermarket. And there's plenty of them out there. You just want to be leery of, just because it looks like your starter, what's going on the inside of it. Sometimes it isn't up to par. Now, if you would contact us, we have different lines that we carry, and different aftermarket starters that we believe in, and we can pick one out for you for your 660 and get it to you. But once again, if you're just looking over the internet, just be careful, because I've opened these up before and they may look the same on the outside, but they are definitely not on the inside. And the guy we talked to last week, shoot, he went through 2, 3 of them. I was like, all right, dude, come on. We need to go ahead and stop buying that same one over and over again. So just be careful. All right, Kyren, our TTR 125. He said it was put together again and it ran well. The second ring didn't actually have a shape on its side, even in a magnifying glass, just a rectangular ring. It smoked bad even after 10 minutes. All right, I'm curious. I mean, because you're supposed to be, the second ring should be the wiper ring, so it actually on the side, if this is the top, it should actually have this kind of a shape ever so slightly on the side, because it's designed to actually help wipe the oil down into the oil ring and then force it out through those holes that are actually in the oil ring through the middle of the piston. So it should look like that. He said it smoked bad even after 10 minutes. I would then question if you just replaced the rings and didn't do the piston as well, you should go back and check and make sure your cylinder isn't actually worn out, because, well, If one wears, the other one's going to wear too. Usually the piston will wear out first, and you can just get away with typically putting in pistons and new rings, and then you're going to be okay. But if the wear is excessive, well, then you're going to need to bore it if it's possible for that particular machine, and if not, then you need to go ahead and replace it. All right, Dome is asking me, he's got a Polaris RZR 900 XP. I know a little bit about that unit. My engine was not engaging at all through the shift, though the shifter is working. Can you help for a possible issue? Okay. My engine is not engaging at all through the shifter. All right, so you're saying when you shift, it's actually nothing's going on inside the transmission. All right, potentially you could have broken a chain in there, because I don't know which gear you're talking about. There is actually a chain that is used in, I think it's on the reverse side, but something is going wrong in the transmission. And if it's actually going through its full arc, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to pull it apart and then take a peek inside and see what's going on. And trying to diagnose that from here, that may be a little tough. All right, Stacy has asked me about an 86 Fourtrax 250, and ever since we bought it, it shifts rough. I've adjusted the shifter many times and can't seem to get it right. All right, there are a couple of different adjustments in there as far as the shift point and then how it engages. Dadgummit, it's been so long since I've looked in one of those, Stacy. Let me do a little bit of research on the setting, because I've experienced what you're talking about, and I can't remember the setting that we went through to have it actually engage in a smoother manner, because you're talking about it shifting just like a hammer, and there is an adjustment where you can calm that down, or actually, where it transitions into the shift smoother, but I can't come up with it at the particular moment. All right, Pablo's going to take a look at that kickstand switch. All right, Bobby's asked me, I just replaced my starter clutch gear, and it kind of sounds funny when starting. It's not the starter clutch. Well, my question would be, why did you have to replace the starter clutch gear? Was that the only problem that was going on? I mean, it was just not disengaging or not engaging the gear to get it started. So give me a little bit more information. Sounds like that was just part of the equation, and there may be some other things that are going on outside of that the starter clutch itself that probably need to be looked at. All right, White's asked me another Raptor question. 2007 Raptor 700, it will occasionally die after starting within a few seconds. It dies off quick, like I turned off the key. It happens hot or cold. Are you able to ride it at all, or you just crank it up and it idles for a few seconds and then pops off? If it's doing that, I would want to check the fuel system first. But if it is just completely intermittent, you're riding around and just boop, it dies, that's going to be an electrical issue somewhere. And man, there's a lot of ground to cover on that, so it's pretty much a divide and conquer. And you need to look at the switches or the conditions that would cause it to turn off. Your kill switch, the run switch. On that one, that's going to be your two main ones. So take a look at those first, make sure they're not grounded out somewhere on your wiring harness. Do pretty much what I call a wiggle test. You can put a voltometer and have it on a sound when it has continuity, and just start moving the harness around and see if you can get it to ground out on that particular circuit, and that'll tell you what potentially is going on. All right, Mr. Redneck, you must live near me. I have a Honda Rancher 350, great machine. I still own an 03 model myself. Mine's not the 4x4 though, and yours will not go into reverse. What could be wrong? Isn't there an interlock that you have to go past to get that up into reverse on the handlebar? Is that being pulled far enough to where it will allow it to shift in reverse? Check that and see if that's what the problem is. Kyron's responding back, I bought a new cylinder that came with the piston and rings all brand new and lapped the valves, and with the help from your video, you're welcome. Even on the piston bottom ring was just rectangle, no angle. It's a very slight angle, so I mean, I have a hard time kind of following. I usually have to put it on a flat surface, then get out a magnifying glass because, well, my eyes aren't quite what they used to be. All brand new, was it all OEM stuff, or did you do something aftermarket? So give me a little bit more information. All right, Vanos. You don't own a BMW, do you? I have a Racon, I like that. 97 manual that if I downshift it into reverse, it will now go back into neutral unless I turn it off. Then I can upshift to neutral to start. And then it will go through 1 through 5 and back down again. Okay. Oh, there is, and this is actually inside of the casing on the front of that particular engine, where you've got the reverse, I don't want to call it the interlock, but where it actually shifts into the reverse on the front of the centrifugal clutch. You'll see what I'm talking about when you open it up. I'll tell you what. Why don't you open up the parts diagram for that on the transmission on our website, and you'll see what I'm talking about. There's an interlock and an adjustment up at the front of it, and if that's out of whack, it'll hold it there and not want to let it get back into the forward position and then go through the forward gears. Mohammed's asking me, fuel pump always shut down on Can-Am. You're gonna have to give me a little bit more there, guy. I mean, you're telling me that the fuel pump just shuts down. That makes me wonder if that has a filter on the end of it and it is stopped up. So that would make me wonder if there's dirty fuel in there. Anthony's asking me on a 96 600 F3, one of the first FI models out there, is there a special tool to check cylinder compression as it is difficult to get them in there? Well, most of the compression testers I use, that one from Craftsman, as a matter of fact, and I believe Motion Pro makes one. Typically, they've got the thread section that you select for whatever diameter spark plug you have. And the top section is rubber. It's just rubber hose. So that shouldn't be that difficult to get it in there. Once you get it around that first turn and drop it in, it'll screw in. Just be careful if you have to use an adapter, because what are you going to do if you screw it in and then it decides to leave the adapter and brings the hose back out? My solution for that is to use a little bit of red Loctite when you connect your hose to whatever adapter you're going to use. Let that set up. That way, hopefully, it'll pull it back out with it. Not that I've ever had that happen to me before. Mike's asking me what's my opinion of the Aprilia motorcycles and owning one in the U.S. I've ridden one once or twice, but I've never owned one. I know that they are finely crafted machines. The only downside would be finding somebody to work on them for any type of major maintenance and then getting parts for them. That would be the downside of having one in the U.S. Uh-oh, we're getting hit up here, guys. Chop Shop says, I love this channel. I wish I had some Partzilla stickers. Well, I know some people that may have some in their vault, and if you ask real nice, which you have, maybe they will send you out a swag pack. So guys, why don't you mark Mr. Chop Shop and maybe send something his way. All right, taking care of the diagrams. Kyron does one more follow-up. The parts were bought from a dealer on eBay, bought the top end from a other bike, and it's running fine after a whole year. After I started the TTR at first, it ran fine. Now it won't start at all. Well, do a compression test. Sounds like something has gone wrong in the way they packaged it for you. Here's just a thought. Have you mic'd the cylinder and or the piston to make sure that they're the correct clearance? I mean, because if it was a +1, I'm just throwing this out there. If it was a +1 size piston and a stock regular or plus one cylinder and just a regular stock piston, it would wear out the rings in no time because you've got way too much clearance. So if you go through this again, go ahead and have the cylinder measured, the piston measured, and then of course gap the rings to make sure everything is within tolerance. Because you're only talking about a few thousandths, and if you're out, well, it's going to wear out those rings just like that. How can you unlock the winch when it's stuck? Okay, you're going to need to give me a little bit more on that. I assume you're talking about just a regular regular winch, and so I've seen them get bound up and then not want to release. And of course, it's got the clutch on the side, and I've actually had to take apart that clutch. This just a matter of disassembly at that point. You undo the clutch, and then hopefully it'll release. I've actually had to get out a grinding tool and cut the winch cabling itself to get it unwound. It was just that bound up in there. It happens. All right, hi John, do you ship parts for the RZR to Qatar? That is a question for our shipping team, and they will send you an answer on that. On the Polaris stuff, I'm not sure that we can, because they're funny about that. Some manufacturers we can ship for, others we can't. So let the team do the research on that, and because I don't want to answer and tell you something that's not true, and let them respond back to you to see if we can ship you that throttle body or not. All right, William's asking me about what are your thoughts about running a Big Gun Eco slip-on without the power box. I've had the exhaust on my 420 Rancher for a couple of years without the box, and it only backfires very rarely. You're probably okay, and here's the funny part. It was probably backfiring anyway with the stock one. You just couldn't hear it. So now with an opened up exhaust, you can hear it. Little trick that they do. But just putting a slip-on like that, you should be fine. It's not absolutely necessary to modify the air-fuel ratio just for a slip-on exhaust. For the most part, that lets it breathe a little bit. It can compensate on its own, and well, it sounds better for most people. Now, your neighbors may not like it, but that's their problem. All right, Justin's asking me, I just did a compression and leak down on my 2009 R6. Leak down was less than 2% on each cylinder, but the compression is 150 across the board, nearly 50 too low. Well, my question is, what prompted you to go ahead and do a compression and a leak down test on that? And your compression numbers, I take that with a grain of salt. It can be a difference of the temperature, it can be a difference of the whatever gauge that you're using. All I'm looking for when I do a compression check is symmetry going from one cylinder to another, just to see if they're close to each other. I mean, if you've got a 2%, less than 2% leak down on each cylinder, good grief, that's insanely good. Are you sure you're doing it right? So if you would go back and reference a couple of our videos where I show you how to do that. But the compression being 150 across the board, that wouldn't bother me. So my question to you is, what do you think's wrong with the engine, or were you just wanting to check it out because this is a new purchase for you? All right, I just want to know if it's safe to HV a crank, have a crank get ground for oversized bearings on an R6 model. Be careful there, because on the R6, they are really particular about the clearances. And yes, you can do that, but all of the information that would usually be used to determine what size bearing goes out the window, because they will actually measure and then identify the different journal sizes from the factory when the crankshaft is manufactured. And then they also do the same thing for the bearing surface, or the block itself, and you choose your bearings compared to the numbers they stamp on the block compared to what's on the crankshaft. all that's going to be gone. So you are going to have to plastic gauge the entire bottom end to get it put together correctly, because you will not have a point of reference to go to. So just pick one in the center as far as your bearing size, plastic gauge it, and then adjust up or down from that. A lot of work, done it before, but it'll pay off if you're patient with it. Now, but I would think twice about going through all that. I'd probably just go for a regular crank that I didn't have to get ground to straighten out what I assume is probably a spun bearing on it. All right, what else do we have cooking today, guys? You have to excuse me, I'm a little tired today. Didn't sleep very well last night. Not that you needed to know that, but I figured I'd just share it with you. All right, Tom is asking me, I have an 09 YFZ450 R. The thing was running great. All of a sudden, the battery went dead. Switched the battery out. It starts fine right now. But now the bike backfires and sputters, even sometimes shuts off when you accelerate. I think we've got something else going on here electrically other than just the battery. I think the battery was probably just symptomatic of another problem that's going on, because that just doesn't really add up. Check your grounds. Make sure you've got appropriate battery voltage and charging, and almost wonder if it's maybe overcharging. So we want to make sure it's not north of 14 volts at 2,500 to 3,000 RPMs. Check your charging voltage. I think there's something else going on that may have killed your battery, and it's still going on, and it's giving the bike a fit. Oh boy, we're going to dive into a diagram. Y'all really trust my memory, don't you? Bearded Moto, interesting name. Hello, very useful videos. Thank you. I have a question. 2008 GSXR 600. My fuse is good on the starter solenoid, but I got no power in the yellow wire when I hit the start button. Okay. The relay does not click. Makes sense at all. As well as the fuel pump does not turn on. Any help at pointing in the right direction would be appreciated. All right, sounds like the bike isn't even hitting a starting point of just turning your key on, because you should be able to turn your key on. You should hear your the fuel pump click. You should hear the fuel pump prime up, and then your display should go through its just normal gyration, showing you that it can go through the full arc, and then kind of a self-test. So I don't think we're even getting to that point. You checked the fuse in the starter. I think you've got another fuse blown somewhere else in the system. And it's just going to be on the ignition side, not the start side. So take a peek at that and then let us know. Yeah, go get them, Cal. All right, side splitting is asking me, I've got a 96 CBR 600 F3, another one. I got an aftermarket fuel cutoff, but it pulses. Is this correct, or should it be running all the time? As long as it's maintaining the correct pressure, then yeah, it's going to cut on and off. So I would say to put a pressure fuel pressure gauge on it and see if it's in the 45 to 52 PSI range. All right. Now I think he's agreeing with me about resizing the bearings. Hello, Bill from Northern Ireland. I hope things are well on the other side of the pond. What else do we have for me, kids? We're going to wind this up here in a few minutes. George is asking me, what causes dry smoke? That's a new one. On startup, when accelerating after it idles for a few minutes. It's not a steady smoke, and it does not smoke noticeably when riding. It just puffs at startup and acceleration after idling. All right, that's probably coming from one or two areas, and it's going to involve your intake side. It is possible, if it's getting enough blow-by, that it is putting too much pressure inside of your crankcase, and it probably has a breather that's coming up into your intake. And over time, that starts to pool a little bit of oil. Then you really wrap the throttle, then it takes a big deep breath of air and then pulls in a little bit of oil as well. So that is potential number one. The second is potentially your valve stem seals. I've seen that happen before. It'll sit there and let a little bit of oil go past the seal. It'll build up next to your the stem and the valve itself. Once again, you really pour the coals to it, wakes the engine up, really pulls in a full charge of air and oil, poof, a little bit of blue smoke. So that would be my two guesses on that. Raptor Crazy is asking me, I have a question that's a little bit off topic. Do you guys work on Harley Davidsons and other motorcycles, or is it just like dirt bikes? Well, no, we pretty much work on any of the major Japanese manufacturers. That's what we really focus in on the most. Have I spun wrenches on a couple of Harleys? Well, yes. Am I really proficient at them? No. Just being honest. I mean, we do carry the basic maintenance parts for Harleys, but when it really gets into involved procedures, that's when you're going to have to go see a Harley mechanic. They are a different breed, a special breed, because the Harleys are just a little bit different. I'll leave it at that. All right, Brittany's asking me, John, I love your show. I don't know if this is much of a show, it's more of a Q&A. On a CRF 450 R, do you have to pull the whole carburetor just to clean it, or is there a way to clean it without all the crazy work? If it's a carburetor that's been sitting up for a long time, then yes, you're going to have to pull down the carburetor. There's no getting around it. But that being said, if there is just maybe some trash got pulled into it, a little bit of water that got into the float bowl, there is, of course, a large bolt on the bottom of it where you can actually remove it and then change the jets if you needed to. But it is a large enough bolt to where if there's any trash or water that needs to be dumped out, that'd be the first place to do it before you go and pull the seat and the intake and everything else, just to get that carb out of the middle of that frame where it is crammed in. Well, all right, guys, I think we're gonna call it a day with that one and head to the house. It's been a long week, kids. Well, listen, I do want to say thank you for coming in again and giving me all these great questions. I enjoy fielding the ones I can and the ones I cannot. We'll find out the answers and get them back to you. And we'd also like to say thank you for shopping here with us at Partzilla. And from what I can tell, looking out in the distribution center, it looks like we're finally catching up. So all your patience is finally starting to pay off, and we are actually getting caught back up with all the packages that needed to get out of this place. Well, once again, thanks for shopping with us. God willing, I will see you next week. Y'all have a good weekend and a good week, and we'll talk again then. Y'all have a great day.